ወገኖች ጥያቄያችሁን አውቃለሁ ከሰው እንዳልኖር አታድርጉኝ የጎረቤት ጥርስ አታስነክሱብኝ የሩቁም የቅርቡም ቡና መጠጫ አድርገኝ አይነት በመማፀን ቃና እየተሞላ ነበር ተብሏል ንግግራቸው። የመኖሪያ ፈቃድ ያለን ሰዎች ኢትዮጵያውያኑ ወደ ማረሚያ ቤት ሳይወሰዱ በየአካባቢው ማስተባበር ብንችል ከኢንሲዝዋ ኖቡንሲዝዋ ንቅናቄ መሪዎች ንግዚዌ ምቹ ነው እና ኒኮሲኮኖ ንድባዳን ባንዳ ጋር ተወያይተዋል። የማርች ኤንድ ማርች እንቅስቃሴ መስራችና አወዛጋቢ የምትባለው አክቲቪስት ጃሲንታ ንጎቤሴ ዞማ ባደረገችው ንግግር እስከ ኖቬምበር 2026 በየሳምንቱ ሐሙስ ሰልፉ ይቀጥላል ማለቷ
ሞርስ ማለት ይችላል። ይህ ሞርስ ነው የሚያዘጋጀው ወንድም ኢዮብ።
ጤና ይስጥልኝ። በምድር ኃይል ፎሬን ሲነፋ በአየር ኃይል ፓሬድ በባህር ኃይል ማስተሪንግ ሲደረግ በሞርስ የበላይ ጠባቂ ፈቃድ ወደ እናንተ እንዲደርስ የተዘጋጀው የሞርስ ልዩ ዘገባ ሲሆን የዛሬው አሁን ጀመረ። የተወደዳችሁ ቤተሰቦቻችን እናንተ ላይክ፣ ሼር፣ ሰብስክራይብ በማድረግ አዳዲስ ቤተሰብ እንድናፈራ እገዛችሁንና ድጋፋችሁን እንሻለን። የደወል ምልክቷን መንካት አትርሱ ብለህ ንገርልኝ ብሏል የሞርሴዲሲ።
Imposed deadline for undocumented migrants to leave the country. The wave of anti-immigrant sentiment and what critics say is a failure by police to protect victims have tarnished South Africa's post-Nelson Mandela reputation as a defender of human rights and strained ties with other African nations.
መቼም ሰው ሆኖ ከሰው ጋር ሲኖሩ አንዱን መቻል እንደ ባህሪው ማስታመም አለበት እንጂ ሰውን ትቶ ብቻ እንዴት መኖር ይቻላል የሚለው አገረኛ አባባል ወንዝ ተሻግሮ ደቡብ አፍሪካ ደርሶ በፕሬዝዳንት ራማፎሳ ልብ ውስጥ ያደረ ይመስላል። ምክንያቱም ሰነድ የሌላቸው የውጭ ሀገር ዜጎች ደቡብ አፍሪካን ለቀው እንዲወጡ የተቀመጠው ሰኔ 30 ትናንት ማብቂያው ነበርና የቀኑን መቃረብ አስመልክተው ምክንያቱም ሰነድ የሌላቸው የውጭ ሀገር ዜጎች ደቡብ አፍሪካን ለቀው እንዲወጡ የተቀመጠው ሰኔ 30 ትናንት ማክሰኞ ማብቂያው ነበርና የቀኑን መቃረብ አስመልክተው የተናገሩትን ልብ የሚል ከተገኘ ማለት ነው። እንዲህም አሉ ሲሪል ራማፎዛ። ስደተኞችን በመቃወም ሰልፍ ለመውጣት ያቀዱ ወገኖች ከማስፈራራት ከዛቻና ከአስገዳጅ ትዕዛዞች ሊታቀቡ ይገባል ብለዋል። ወገኖች ጥያቄያችሁን አውቃለሁ ከሰው እንዳልኖር አታድርጉኝ የጎረቤት ጥርስ አታስነክሱብኝ የሩቁም የቅርቡም ቡና መጠጫ አድርገኝ አይነት በመማፀን ቃና እየተሞላ ነበር ተብሏል ንግግራቸው። ስደተኛ ጠል የሆኑ ደቡብ አፍሪካውያን በቀለም ከሚዛመዷቸው ወንድም እህቶቻቸው ሀገራቸውን ለቀው እንዲወጡ ማስጠንቀቂያ መስጠታቸውን ተከትሎ በነበሩ ሳምንታት ሊከሰት የሚችል ጥቃትን በመስጋት በሺዎች የሚቆጠሩ የሌሎች የአፍሪካ ሀገራት ዜጎች ሀገሪቱን ለቀው ወጥተዋል። በደቡብ አፍሪካ የሚኖሩ አንዳንድ የውጭ ሀገር ዜጎች በህጋዊ መንገድ የመጡ ናቸው። እነሱም ቢሆኑ በህጋችንና በህገ መንግስታችን የመጠበቅ መብት አላቸው በማለት ራማፎዛ አስገንዝበው ነበር። ስደተኛ ጠል የሆኑ ሰልፈኞችና ሰልፉን የሚያስተባብሩ ወገኖች እጅ ላፊ ፈጽመው ዲፕሎማሲውን የመንግስት ጨዋታ እንዳያበላሹባቸው ፕሬዝዳንት ራማፎዛ በሳምንታዊ መልእክታቸው ቆምጨጭ ያለ ንግግር ተናግረው አስገንዝበዋል። አክለውም የመቃወም መብት ሌሎችን ለማስፈራራት፣ ንብረት ለማውደም ወይም ሁከት ለመፍጠር ፈቃድ እንደማይሰጥ ገልጸዋል። በደርባን በጆሃንስበርግና በሌሎች ከተሞች ስደተኞችን የሚቃወሙ ሰልፎች እንዲካሄዱ የፈቀደው ፖሊስ የሆዶን ብሶት አደባባይ ወጥቶ ሲጮህ ውሎ ወደ ቤቱ ሲገባ ይረሳዋል፣ በመተንፈሱም ጉዳዩ ረገብ ይላል ብሎ በመገመት መሆኑን የሚያሳብቅበት ሰልፍ መውጣት ትችላላችሁ የሚለው ፈቃድ ግን ባህላዊ የጦር መሳሪያዎችን ይዞ መውጣት አይታሰብም ሲል ነበር። ለነገሩ በቋፍ ያለ የቆመበት ምድር ከድቶት አፈር የሚገባ መሆኑን ዘንግቶ ሌላውን በመግደል አፈር ለማስገባት ያቀደ መኖሩ ተሰምቶ ስጋት በሆነበት ወቅት ሟች መሞት ሆኖ ስለሞት ግን እንዴት ባለ ሁኔታ እገደል ይሆን? በየትኛውስ መሳሪያ ነፍሴን ወደ ፈጠራት ይልኳት ይሆን? በማለት ተጨንቋልና ባህላዊ መሳሪያ መያዝ አይፈቀድም መባሉን ከፖሊስ አንደበት ሲሰማ በጅምላ አለመገደሉ በደቦ አለመጨፍጨፉን አስቦ ጌታ ምክንያት አለው ማለቱ አይቀርም። ይህ መሆኑ ግን አብዛኛውን ጊዜ ጋሻና ዱላ ይዘው በሚወጡት የዙሩ ብሔረሰብ ተወላጆች ሰልፈኞችና በፖሊስ መካከል አላስፈላጊ ችግር ይፈጠር ይሆናል የሚለው ደግሞ ሌላው ስጋት ሆኖ ሰንብቶ ነበር።
South Africa on edge. A June 30th deadline set by anti-migrant groups for undocumented foreigners to leave has come and gone. Thousands protested across the country against what they say is a broken immigration system. So what's driving the debate, and what are the political, economic and diplomatic costs? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Imran Khan. Last month, anti-migrant groups in South Africa warned all those living in the country illegally to leave by June 30th. With this deadline approaching, many took to the streets. In the lead up to this date, thousands of foreigners left the country. Others are waiting for assistance to do the same. Anti-migrant groups blame the government for not doing enough to curb undocumented migration. President Cyril Ramaphosa insists dealing with immigration is the sole responsibility of the government and rejects what he described as vigilantism. In the past, South Africa has witnessed violent outbreaks of public anger against undocumented foreigners, often blamed for taking jobs and committing crimes. But what are the root causes of this problem? We'll get to our guests in just a moment. But first, this report from Cara Legg.
For these anti-immigration protesters across South Africa, the message is clear. Foreigners without papers must go.
We are tired of them, we are hard for.
We are requesting a simple thing, that they must go, but they are failing to go.
In KwaZulu-Natal state and beyond, the marchers have been building pressure ahead of the June 30th deadline set by anti-immigration groups for undocumented workers to leave South Africa. They say they are representing the people who have had enough.
We are tired of illegal immigrants who have flocked our country, numbers in the millions. Actually, nobody even knows how many of them are here walking around undocumented.
For many migrants, the message is not political, it's personal. Makeshift camps have emerged in Johannesburg and Durban as thousands prepare for voluntary return or deportation, many fearful for their lives.
I'm crying because I'm living this small children. The problem.
People are very scared and it's dangerous, so people are running away.
Some arriving back home overwhelmed with relief. The pressures driving this debate are not new, but in South Africa they are mounting. Unemployment stands at around 32% officially. That's roughly 1 in 3 South Africans without work, among the highest rates globally. Then there's crime and safety. South Africa records around 5,000 to 6,000 murders every quarter. That's roughly 60 people killed every day, one of the highest murder rates in the world. And social pressure. Although migrants make up only around 4% of the population, according to the UN, but in public debate, they're often blamed for the economic shortcomings. Security has now been tightened nationwide as authorities try to prevent a repeat of past xenophobic violence. South Africa's president has warned against any escalation.
There is no place for racism in our country, no place for sexism, for xenophobia, for Afrophobia, or any other form of intolerance.
With fear rising on all sides, South Africa is once again at the centre of a question it has faced before. How to balance pressure at home with the people who came seeking a better future. Cara Legg, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our guests. They're all joining us from Johannesburg. William Gumede, who is an associate professor at the School of Governance at the University of the Witwatersrand. Nomvula Makanyane, First Deputy Secretary General of the governing ANC party, and Richard Pithouse, Distinguished Research Fellow at the Global Centre for Advanced Studies. A warm welcome to each of you. I want to start with Nomvula first. Human Rights Watch, South African human rights organisations, international government organisations of all calls.
መቼም ሰው ያልፍልኛል ብሎ ሕይወቴ ይቀየራል ብሎ እንጂ መራቅማ ጥሩ አልነበረም። ስደት ሲጀምር እግሩን ከአገሩ አፈር አራግፎ መንገድ ሲገባ የቤተሰብ የወገኑ ትንፋሽ ርቆት መላካሉ በረዶ ሲሆን ያን ጊዜ ነው ውርደቱ። ከአገር የወጣ ቢጭኑት አህያ ቢጋልቡት ፈረስ ይሉት አባባል ድሮ አገር ቤት ሳለ የሰውማ የሰው ነው እንደ ጎረቤትህ ሳይሆን እንደ ቤትህ ተብሎ ላደገ ሰው የሰው አገር የሰው መሆኑ አይጠፋውም። በእርግጥም በዘንድሮ የአውሮፓውያን ዓመት 2026 መጀመሪያ ላይ የተቀሰቀሰውን የተቃውሞ ማዕበል ተከትሎ ከ12000 በላይ ስደተኞች ከሀገር እንዲወጡ ወይም ወደ ሀገራቸው እንዲመለሱ መደረጋቸውን የሚያመላክቱ መረጃዎች አሉ። ጋና፣ ማላዊ፣ ሞዛምቢክ፣ ናይጄሪያ እና ዚምባብዌ ዜጎቻቸውን በአውሮፕላንና በአውቶቡስ የማስወጣት ስራ የጀመሩ ሲሆን እስከ 3500 ያህሉ በፈቃደኝነት ወጥተዋል። በደቡብ አፍሪካ በስደተኞች ላይ የሚሰነዘረው የጥላቻ ጥቃት ለዓመታት የቆየ ከባድ ችግር ሲሆን በዘንድሮ ዓመት ብቻ የሁለት ሰዎች ሕይወት ማለፉን መዘገባችን አይዘነጋም። ደቡብ አፍሪካ ሰኔ 30 ቀን የታቀደውን የኢሚግሬሽን ተቃውሞ ከመድረሱ በፊት ወደ 6000 የሚጠጉ የፖሊስ መኮንኖችን አሰማርታ በተቻለ መጠን ስደተኛ እንዳይሞት መግደያ የዛው የሚሰነዝሩትን ይወልኝ ብላ ነበርና ይህ መሆኑ ከደቦ ግድያ ማምለጥ የመቻሉን እና የመዳኑን አብሳሪ ያመላከተ ነበር። መንግስትም ህጋዊ ያልሆኑ የውጭ ዜጎች በወሩ መጨረሻ አገሪቱን ለቀው እንዲወጡ የተቃውሞ አዘጋጆች የሰጡትን የመጨረሻ ውሳኔ ውድቅ አድርጓል። ውጥረቱ እውን ነው። ባለስልጣናት አመፅን ለመከላከልና ሁኔታውን በቁጥጥር ስር ለማዋል ሲሰሩ ሁሉም አይኖች ወደ ሰኔ 30 እየተመለከቱ ነበር። እንደኛው አገር ድሮ የዓመቱ ትምህርት ሲያበቃ እንደምንለው እንደ ልጅነታችን ሰኔ 30 እንገናኝ ዛቻ የሆነበት ከፍርሃት ሊላቀቅ አልቻለም ቢባል ምን ተገኝቶ አንጀቱ ይደነድናልና ብሎ መልሶ ጠያቂ አይጠፋም። ለሁሉም ነገር ግን ማንኛውም አፍሪካዊ ስደተኛ በከፍተኛ ጥንቃቄ ራሱ ከድንገተኛ አደጋ መጠበቅ ይኖርበታል። በተለይ የዙሉ ጸረ ስደተኛ መንጋዎች ሰልፍ ባዘወተሩበት ከተማዎች ለጊዜውም ቢሆን ቦታ መቀየር አለባቸው የሚል ምክርም ሲተላለፍ ነበር። የደቡብ አፍሪካ ጸረ ስደተኛ ቡድኖች ህገወጥ የተባሉ የውጭ ሀገር ዜጎች ከደቡብ አፍሪካ ለቀው እንዲወጡ ያስቀመጡት የሰኔ 30 በእኛ የጊዜ አቆጣጠር ሰኔ 23 የጊዜ ገደብ ማብቃቱን ተከትሎ በተለያዩ ሀገሪቱ ከተሞች ከፍተኛ ውጥረት መንገሱ ነው የተዘገበው። የተቃውሞ ሰልፉ ወደ ከፋ ሁከትና ብጥብጥ ያመራል የሚለው ስጋት በሰፊው በማንዣበቡ በሀገሪቱ ያሉ ሰራተኞች ስራቸውን ትተው የንግድ ሱቆችም ተዘግተው ትራንስፖርትም ተቋርጧል። ምክንያቱ ለስደተኛው አበሳ አገኘሃለሁ ሰኔ 30 ተብሏልና። በደርባንና በጆሃንስበርግ መሃል የሚገኙ አብዛኞቹ ሱቆችና የንግድ ተቋማት የዝርፊያ ስጋት ስላለባቸው በዋዜማው እንደተዘጉ ድርሽ የሚል ጠፍቶ ውለው አደሩ። የደቡብ አፍሪካ የጸጥታ ኃይሎች ሰልፈኞቹን በቅርብ እየተከታተሏቸው በደርባን ከተማ የዞሎ ባህላዊ አልባሳትን የለበሱ ዱላና ጋሻ የያዙ አነስተኛ ሰልፈኞች ቡድኖች በአንድ ፓርክ ውስጥ ተሰብስበው አባህምበ ሂዱ ልቀቁ የሚሉ መፈክሮችን እያዜሙ ውለው አመሹ። ይህ የጊዜ ገደብ ካለፉት ሳምንታት ጀምሮ በፈጠረው ፍርሃት ምክንያት በሺዎች የሚቆጠሩ የውጭ ሀገር ዜጎች ወደ ሀገራቸው ለመመለስ ቆንስላዎችን እንዲሁም ጊዜያዊ መጠለያዎችን እያጨናነቁ ሰነበቱ። የደቡብ አፍሪካ መንግስት ሊፈጠር የሚችል ሁከትን ለመከላከል ተጨማሪ የፖሊስ ኃይል ያሰማራ ሲሆን ወታደራዊ ኃይሉንም በተጠንቀቅ አቁሟል። ይህ መሆኑ ሲሰማ በእርግጥ የስደተኛው ልብ መዝለሉን አቁሟል። ፕሬዚደንት ሲሪል ራማፎዛ ሕግ የሚጥሱ አካላት ላይ ጥብቅ እርምጃ እንደሚወሰድ ማስጠንቀቃቸው ጥዬ በወድቅ እንጂ እንዲሁም አልሞተም ባይ አልሞት ተጋዳይ ሰዎች መፈጠራቸው በጣት አልሞት ባይ ተጋዳይ ሰዎች መፈጠራቸውና እነርሱም ቢሆኑ በጣት የሚቆጠሩም ቢሆኑ የመንግስትን አባባል እንደ ከለላ ሳይቆጥሩት አልቀሩም ተብሏል። ህጋዊ ሰነድ የሌላቸው የውጭ ዜጎች በሙሉ ሀገሪቱን ለቀው እንዲወጡ ጸረ ስደተኛ ቡድኖች ያስቀመጡት መደበኛ ያልሆነ ጊዜ ገደቡ ከመጠናቀቁ በፊት አገሪቱን ለቀው ውጡልኝ ባይ ጸረ ስደተኞች ምን ያህል ስፋት ያለው ቦታ በምትኩ እንደሚያገኙና እንደሚመቻቸው እንደሚደላቸው ባይታወቅም ለመውጣት ተስፋ በማድረግ ስደተኞች ለ4 ቀናትና ከዚያ በላይ አውቶቡስ ሲጠብቁ ተስተውለዋል። ምንም እንኳን የደቡብ አፍሪካ መንግስት ይህንን የጊዜ ገደብ ባይቀበለውምና በስደተኞች ላይ የሚደርሰውን ጥቃት ቢያወግዝም ድርጊቱን በቁርጠኝነት ማስቆም ባለመቻሉ ከውጭው እሳት ከሩቁ ርግማን የውስጡ የሚያቃጥል የሩቁ የሚለበልብ መሆኑ ያልገባቸው ወይም ገብቷቸው ማለት ስላለባቸው ብቻ ከሌሎች የአፍሪካ ሀገራትና የሲቪክ ማህበራት ጠንካራ ትችት ለማቅረብ ይሽቀዳደሙ ነበር። ራማፎዛ ላይ
The ANC has been accused of that. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a far-fetched allegation. It also shows that people don't appreciate where we come from as a nation, but also a government that protects the rights of South Africans to assemble, to protest, and to even warn against acts of violence and ensuring that everything is done within the confines of the law. It is the highest court in the land that has actually given South Africans the right to assemble, the freedom to protest, and even access in terms of them being heard by government. That on its own cannot actually be attributed to us being deputized by those who are involved in acts of violence. In actual fact, it shows the maturity of our democracy. Just 30 years ago, South Africans would not have gathered in this particular fashion and not been exposed to the might of the law. We have acted totally different from many who actually use force to engage those that have got a view. Participatory democracy is something that we must protect. It is also not correct that when there is an acknowledgement that things have not been done properly, let's work together with civil society to address issues. Then we are all accused of being xenophobic and allowing the state to be deputized by those who are doing things wrongfully. So far, Nobody has promoted any act of violence. Nobody has made any commitment.
We have several correspondents on the ground. We've been reporting all throughout the day from Johannesburg, from Cape Town. The pictures that we're seeing are of streets empty, people in fear, and yet you're saying it's a far-fetched notion. It's happening outside of your house. How can you justify those two words, a far-fetched notion?
Everything that you see on your screen, including that of Al Jazeera, you see people in their cultural diversity, walking the streets of South Africa, marching and saying, let the government respond, let people be heard, let those who are illegal in South Africa and undocumented go back and come back being documented in South Africa. Let government protect what is of value to South Africans. What we are showing now in the screen, it's people who are coming from a particular cultural group together with the South African police who are responsible for ensuring that there is law and order. Anyone who then wants to insinuate that what you see in your screen now is a promotion of xenophobia, is a promotion of lawlessness, is somebody who doesn't understand our diversity, but also tolerance. Here are the women lying out in the streets. We have actually seen government coming out, supporting them and ensuring that they are protected. Ordinarily today,
okay, you've made a number of points there. You've made a number of points there that I want to put.
Has happened.
That I want to put to our other guests. William, apparently I am in the wrong, and what's happening in South Africa is under control and completely normal. What do you think to that?
I fear that it's not under control, and that this may actually run totally out of control. Firstly, as a country, we're a violent country. And it is very, very important that although everyone has the right to protest, it's a constitutional right, but we cannot allow chaos where people beat up other people, or even marching with weapons. I think as a country, as a government, and I'm not in government, but the government must absolutely assert its power of being the government. And anyone who marched with any kind of dangerous weapon should be isolated and should be removed out of the march. Peaceful marches, it's appropriate, it's everyone's right, but I think once a person step outside the constitutional right, or even march with a weapon, I don't think there's any excuse, cultural or whatsoever, to march with weapons or to intimidate anyone else or to beat people up. I think people must also focus, and here is the responsibility of civil society, also the responsibility of all other political parties, to focus the minds of people on what are the real issues of this crisis here. We've got a corruption issue, we've got an incompetence issue, and we've got policies where our government the last couple of years, and it was predominantly an ANC government, have supported dictators in other African countries. Whether it is in Zimbabwe or in Mozambique, or other military dictators who destroy their countries and then force people to come to South Africa. Right. So we have to change our policies in that context to support only Democrats in Africa and isolate any dictatorship in Africa.
Well, let's get to the root causes of this. It's a very interesting point that you make. Richard, one of the root causes of this has been blamed on economic mismanagement. It's been blamed on policies going back decades when it comes to education, when it comes to the silver bullet of it. Effectively, education hasn't been there, so people haven't been educated about this. But one of the things that people are now increasingly talking about is polarization of the politics within the ANC. So Jacob Zuma is using this as a battering ram against Cyril Ramaphosa. Is that something that you think is true?
It's absolutely true. We have to be very careful not to imply that, impoverishment, which is a direct result of the failures of the ANC, automatically produces xenophobia. It doesn't. There are many impoverished people, many working class people who are opposed to xenophobia, and all of the most significant organizations of the poor and the working class are opposed to xenophobia. This is a political project that has been built over some years by a variety of actors, including the right-wing populists within the ANC, but a set of other actors. But in the last year or so, it has been primarily grounded in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, where Jacob Zuma has his primary support base. It's been mediated through an ethnic politics, and it is undeniably tied to his party, the Umkhonto we Sizwe party. When there are these xenophobic protests on the streets, people are threatening sometimes to kill people they call foreigners. They also often attack South Africans of minority ethnicities. You see people in the T-shirts of Jacob Zuma's party on the streets, participating in that thuggery, in that violence. There's been no condemnation of it from the senior leadership of that party. You're absolutely correct. This is clearly a strategy by, it can't be reduced to Jacob Zuma's party, but his party clearly is participating in this, supporting it, has played a very significant role in the crisis we now face. And they're doing that because there's an election coming in November. But we have to ask a deeper question. As Nomvula knows very well, we did see scenes like this in our streets 30 and more years ago when Inkatha was mobilizing in a very similar way against the ANC. These pictures actually don't indicate democracy. They remind many of us who are a little older of what we saw in the late 1980s and early 1990s. We have to ask ourselves the question, why is the MKP creating this capacity for street violence? What does it plan to do with it? What will happen with that capacity for street violence in the future? Who will it be mobilized against?
Nomvula, Jacob Zuma, a member of your party, a president, in fact, of your party and the president of South Africa, is undermining your party. What do you make of that accusation?
A former president of our party, a former member of the African National Congress. Of course, he has defined himself outside of the ANC, and hence he has his own political party. Of course, what we must guard against is a situation where opportunists and reactionary forces take advantage of the real issues that affect the people of this country and use that for political mileage. We must guard against that. And it is unfortunate that in the build-up towards this day, we have also seen some of the organizers directly identifying with him, identifying with his party. That we all know it has taken a stance of being anti the establishment, anti-development, anti-progressive laws. And this is not something that has to do with the African National Congress. We have an ANC government, we have an ANC-led government under the Government of National Unity. We have the African National Congress, whose policies and positions are totally different from those of Zuma's party. What we have to work on is to remind South Africans that we have a fragile democracy that can be undermined and that can also be taken advantage of to isolate South Africa from the global community. And that is why, as we concede that not all
Nomvula, we will get onto the global. We'll get onto the global part. We'll get onto the global part of this in just a moment. But I want to go to William. William, you have done a lot of work when it comes to studying why this has been happening so far. If you could break down the key reasons that you think, despite of the politics or apart from the politics which we have just discussed. So what are the big issues for you?
I mean, it is, the election is coming, and, you know, as the ANC is declining, and the ANC for the last years was the dominant political party, although it's still in government. And ANC leaders in the past did push back against the xenophobia and so on. So what has happened now? A vacuum has opened up at the center of South Africa's politics as the ANC declines. And what is happening is we've seen a number of populist groups and opportunist groups, individuals, extra-parliamentary individuals, but also former political parties have weaponized the migration issue as a way of gaining power, getting into politics. And we've got the ingredients on the ground. The ingredients are high unemployment. I mean, 60% of our youth are unemployed. Close to 40% of adults are unemployed. We start off, we've got a culture of violence that comes from apartheid, the apartheid government culture of violence, and then the opposition to apartheid was violence, so, counter-violence. So, and we've never been able to clamp down on this culture of violence, which ironically has undermined economic growth and undermined stability, and has actually contributed really to this high unemployment. So we haven't dealt with that, and we also haven't dealt with the corruption, which has also led to these high unemployments, because corruption has led to the failure of the state, and also led to businesses and foreign businesses and local businesses closing down and so on. Has increased that. Now our problem is, what happens tomorrow? We're a country where there are politicians, whether inside the ANC or outside the ANC, that weaponize our differences in order to gain political power and an income and so on. Now the migrant issue is now a real issue that's been used since in the decline of the ANC. I think what we as South Africans must be absolutely aware of and that we have to respond to is, after this, if all the migrants are out of the country, our problems will still be the same. Culture violence will still be there. Unemployment will still be there. State failure will still be there.
William, we're running out of time, and you've made a number of points that I want to put to the other guests as well. Richard, one of the things I want to put to you is this June 30th deadline that everybody has been talking about isn't really an official deadline at all, is it? It was set by anti-migrant groups. They've almost hijacked it from the government. So how do you allow something like that to happen?
Well, that's exactly the thing. I mean, the government, the coalition governments, the ANC, the state have ceded huge power to these groups, which, as we saw today, can't actually mobilize that many people. Their marches have not been that big, but they've had an excellent media strategy. And the South African media is generally very weak, is easily played. And this power has been ceded. And this deadline, announced by an organization that consistently engages in criminal behavior and, astonishingly malicious forms of public discourse, somehow was, able to become this big thing. That's a failure of the state and a failure of the political class. And it's also a failure of the media. The one good thing is that when any kind of political organization makes a promise it can't keep, it kind of like pricks the balloon. And I don't think March on March is going to come out of this with the same kind of often uncritical views that they've received in the media in particular. I think it's going to be a problem for them.
Nomvula, you've abdicated responsibility to the March on March political group that set a deadline for you. What do you respond to that? What's your response to that?
We've never abdicated, and the 30th of June is a demand coming from civil society. Ours continues, as we have now seen the work that has been done by the government, of course, with some of the responses around the Border Management Agency, the issues that have to do with bylaw enforcement, the issues that have to deal with drug trafficking, but most importantly also being able to call up those that were involved in the organizing, engage with them through their leaders, as we have seen what the president has been able to do, and what we have also been doing through civil society beyond March and March, working on a platform now through parliamentary processes to get government to come and explain to South Africans how we can all work together, including the right and responsibility of every South African citizen. We know that, yes, we are in a very serious
Nomvula, I'm going to stop you there because you're repeating what sounds like talking points from the ANC. I want a human response for you. Are you worried about abdication of power? You've effectively given up to the March and March movement and an artificial deadline that they are now dictating to you. How do you feel about that?
I'm actually elated because these are the freedoms we fought for. The right of South Africans to express themselves. They've also come forward to government and committed that they would work within the confines of the law. We've refused to politicize an issue that affects people across racial lines, across class, that we all have to work on. I'm happy also that we've seen a state that has not descended on peaceful marches, on people up until now, have also assisted the police to apprehend some of the drug lords and going to the different drug dens in Mpumalanga, here in Gauteng, as well as in other parts of the country, including KwaZulu-Natal, in Pietermaritzburg. What we must never do is to make this a political issue. It's an issue that goes beyond our own boundaries. It's not about dictatorship. It's also about a globalized economy that continues to disadvantage those that are supposed to benefit. It's mostly young people that are out there in the streets and ourselves. We can't be the only country that is capable of accommodating people. We need to work with our counterparts across the region, in the continent and globally, to look at these policies and programs that can ensure, therefore, that if we talk about a globalized economy, it must be for the benefit even of the underdeveloped.
I want to thank all our guests, William Agumedi, Nomvula Mokonyane and Richard Peterhouse. And I want to thank you as well for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. That's it from me, Imran Khan, and the team here.
የአገሬ ሰዎች እናቶቻችን የበዓል ዳቦ በገበር ምጣድ አድርገው ከታች እንጨት አንድደው ከላይ ገበር ምጣዱን በከደኑት ብረት ምጣድ ላይ ተጨማሪ እሳት እንደሚያነዱትና ከላይ እሳት ከታች እሳት ሆነ እንደሚባለው ከውጭው ትችት ከውስጡ ተቃውሞ ተቀብለው ያስተናገዱት ፕሬዝዳንት ትራማፎዛ ቀበቷቸውን ጠበቅ አደረጉና ህጋዊ ያልሆኑ የውጭ ዜጎች በወሩ መጨረሻ አገሪቱን ለቀው እንዲወጡ የተቃውሞ አዘጋጆች የሰጡትን የመጨረሻ ውሳኔም ውድቅ ሆኗል አሉ። በአሁኑ ሰዓት በደቡብ አፍሪካ ደርባን ከተማ የስደተኛ ጠል ሰልፎ ፖይንት ፖሊስ ስቴሽን አካባቢ አጥለቅልቆ ታይቷል። የደቡብ አፍሪካ ጸረ ስደተኛ ቡድኖች ህገወጥ የተባሉ የውጭ ሀገር ዜጎች ከደቡብ አፍሪካ ለቀው እንዲወጡ ያስቀመጡት የሰኔ 30 የጊዜ ገደብ ማብቃቱን ተከትሎ በተለያዩ የሀገሪቱ ከተሞች ከፍተኛ ውጥረት መንገሱና የተቃውሞ ሰልፉ ወደ ከፋ ሁከትና ብጥብጥ ያመራል የሚለው ስጋት በሰፊው በማንዣበቡ በሀገሪቱ ያሉ ሰራተኞች እንቅስቃሴያቸውን ለመገደብ ማንንም ሳያማክሩ ከራሳቸው ጋር ተነጋግረው ወስነዋል። ሰሞኑን ከቤት አልወጣንም። ዛሬም በጣም ፈርተን ነበር። ነገር ግን እንደፈራነው አይደለም። የነገን ባናውቅም ደህና ውለናል። የኢትዮጵያ ህዝብ በጸሎት አስቡን። በደቡብ አፍሪካ የሚገኙ ኢትዮጵያውያን በደቡብ አፍሪካዊ የስደተኞች ጠል ቡድን ማርች ኤንድ ማርች የተጀመረውና ሁሉም ስደተኞች ሀገራችንን ለቀው እስከ ሰኔ 30 ይውጡልን በማለት ያስቀመጠው የመጀመሪያው ቀን ደርሶ የተከታዩን ቀን ጀንበር ቀይሮታል። ከከተማ ወጣ ባሉ አካባቢዎች ሱቆች ያላቸው ኢትዮጵያውያን የንግድ መደብራቸውን ዘግተው ወደ ከተማ በመምጣት ሌሎች ዘንድ እየኖሩ ስለመሆኑ ተዘግቧል። ሀገሪቱ የመኖሪያ ፈቃድ ያላቸውና የኢትዮጵያን ማህበረሰብ በልዩ ልዩ መንገዶች የሚያስተባብሩ ኢትዮጵያውያን ፖሊሶች በየአካባቢው ስደተኞችን በየቤቱ እያሰሩ ነው፣ በርካታ ኢትዮጵያውያንም እየታሰሩ ነው ሲሉ ነገሩኝ ብሎ የዘገበው ቲክቫህ ኢትዮጵያ የመኖሪያ ፈቃድ ያለን ሰዎች ኢትዮጵያውያኑ ወደ ማረሚያ ቤት ሳይወሰዱ በየአካባቢው ማስተባበር ብንችል ጥሩ ነው። ከምንም በላይ በእኛ መሃል መረጃ መለዋወጥ ሂደቱ ፈጣን ሊሆን ይገባል ሲሉ አሳስበዋል ብሏል። በጆሃንስበርግ በተካሄደው የተቃውሞ ሰልፍ ወቅት በሳኒ ሆክ ህንፃ አካባቢ የአንድ የውጭ ዜጋ ተብሎ በተነገረ ተሽከርካሪ ላይ ድንጋይና ጦብ ተወርውሮ መኪናውን አቃጥለውታል። እንደ ታይም ላይፍ ዘገባ ክስተቱ በተቃውሞ መካከል የተከሰተ ሲሆን በማህበራዊ ሚዲያ የተሰራጨ ቪዲዮም ጉዳቱን ያሳያል። የፕሬዝዳንቱና ስደተኛ ይውጣልና አቀንቃኞች የመጨረሻው ውይይት የተደረገው በሰኔ 30 ዋዜማ በ29 ምሽት ነበር። የደቡብ አፍሪካው ፕሬዝዳንት ሲሪል ራማፎዛ ሰኔ 29 ቀን 2026 ከኢንሲዝዋ ኖቡንሲዝዋ ንቅናቄ መሪዎች ንግዚዌ ምቹኖ እና ኒኮሲኮኖ ንድባዳንባንዳ ጋር ተወያይተዋል። ፕሬዝዳንቱ የተቃውሞ መብት በህግ ማክበርና በሰላማዊ መንገድ መካሄድ እንዳለበት አጽንኦት ሰጥተዋል። እንዲሁም የቦርዶን ስጋት ካዳመጡ በኋላ መንግስት የስደትና ኢሚግሬሽን ጉዳይን በትኩረት እየተከታተለ መሆኑን አነስተው የኢሚግሬሽን ህጎችን ማስፈጸም የመንግስት ብቸኛ ኃላፊነት መሆኑን አስታውቀዋል። በህግና በህግ አግባብ እንመለከተዋለን፣ እንሰራለን ካሉም በኋላ የስደተኛ ጠል ቡድኑ መሪ እስከ ኖቬምበር 4 2026 በየሳምንቱ ሐሙስ እስከ ኖቬምበር 2026 በየሳምንቱ ሐሙስ ሰልፉ ይቀጥላል ማለቷ ስጋታችንን ከፍ አድርጎታል የሚሉ ኢትዮጵያውያን ድምጻቸው ተሰምቷል። ኢትዮጵያውያን በደቡብ አፍሪካ የስደተኞች ጠል ቡድን በሆነው ማርች ኤንድ ማርች አስተባባሪነት የተጀመረው የስደተኞች ይውጡልን ቀነ ገደብ ሰኔ 30 በማብቃቱ በሀገሪቱ የተለያዩ አካባቢዎች መጠነ ሰፊ ሰልፎች እየተካሄዱ መሆኑን በደቡብ አፍሪካ የሚኖሩ ኢትዮጵያውያን ተናግረዋል። በጆሃንስበርግ፣ ፕሪቶሪያ፣ ኬፕታውን ከተሞች ትናንት በተደረጉ ሰልፎች የደቡብ አፍሪካ መንግስት ከፍተኛ ጥበቃ ማድረጉን ተከትሎ በአንዳንድ አካባቢዎች በተለይም በአነስተኛ ከተሞች በነበሩ ሰልፎች አልፎ አልፎ ከተከሰቱ መጠነኛ ዝርፊያ በስተቀር በሰላም ማለፉ ነው የተዘገበው። ይህ በእንዲህ እንዳለ በደቡብ አፍሪካ የስደተኞች እንቅስቃሴን በመቃወም የሚታወቀው የማርች ኤንድ ማርች እንቅስቃሴ መስራችና አወዛጋቢ የምትባለው አክቲቪስት ጃሲንታ ንጎቤሴ ዞማ ባደረገችው ንግግር እስከ ኖቬምበር 2026 በየሳምንቱ ሐሙስ ሰልፉ ይቀጥላል ማለቷ ስጋቱን ከፍ እንዲል ማድረጉ እየተነገረ ሲሆን የትናንቱ ቀን በኢትዮጵያውያን ጸሎት በሰላም አልፏልና ነገር ግን በየሳምንቱ ሰልፍና መሰል ዘረፋዎች የሚቀጥሉ ከሆነ ስጋታችን ከፍተኛ ነው ሲሉ በደቡብ አፍሪካ የሚኖሩ ነዋሪዎች ነገሩኝ ያለው የቲክፋህ ኢትዮጵያን ጨምሮ ዘገባውን ስናዘጋጅ አልጀዚራን፣ ቢቢሲን፣ ፍራንስ 24ን ተጠቅመናል። የተወደዳቸው ይህን ጉዳይ እየተከታተልን በስፋትና በትንታኔ የምናቀርብላችሁ መሆኑን ከወዲሁ መጠቆም እንወዳለን።
ሞርስ ማለት ይችላል። ይህ ሞርስ ነው የሚያዘጋጀው ወንድም ኢዮብ።
በምድር ኃይል ፎሬን ሲነፋ፣ በአየር ኃይል ፓሬድ፣ በባህር ኃይል ማስተሪንግ ሲደረግ በሞርስ የበላይ ጠባቂ ፈቃድ ወደ እናንተ እንዲደርስ የተዘጋጀው የሞርስ ልዩ ዘገባ በዚሁ አበቃ። በቀጣይ በሌላ መርሃ ግብር እንገናኛለን። እስከዚያው ድረስ ጤና ይስጥልኝ።